Hello, everyone. I'm Yash Singhal, the co-founder of CaseRocker. I help legal teams turn complexity into clarity using AI systems and operational design. So today, here in Legal Talks with Yash, this is where we bring the smartest legal minds together to decode how the future of law is actually being built by these teams, not in theory, but in the trenches of real operators. Today, we have with us Mr. Juan Salvador. Juan is one of the rare legal leaders who understands both financial machinery and regulatory reality at scale. As a legal and compliance head for Latin America at Vanguard, he's lived at the intersection of risk, product, capital, and innovation, and how legal teams become a business force multiplier, not just a gatekeeper. So, how are you doing today, Juan?
Doing great. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, Thanks for that nice introduction. Happy to be here.
But again, thanks for being with us, Juan. So, to start, can you give us a quick background about who you are, an intro into your journey, and how your early career led you to being in the role as a legal and compliance head at Latin America and Vanguard?
Sure. I have been very lucky with my career. I started at a very good law firm in Mexico, and I think that experience is the basis of who am I as a lawyer, right? I was taught there to provide really high quality work product, but always, and I think this is primary, and that's kind one of my models when I think about my function is client service. I am crazy about client service, and as we will talk in the future about legal ops, the importance of legal ops and legal tech in providing really good client services, external or internal, right? I think that part of my career was very important and it set the grounds. After that, I have been in different type of institutions, and I also been really lucky to have this different experience. I started at an insurance company, but then I jumped to Washington, D.C., to a multilateral institution. We're talking about a big institution, a little bit bureaucratic, but with really interesting projects. And then I went to the opposite. I came back to Mexico and I worked for a startup, a financial startup here in Mexico. And it's all the other way around. It's fast. We can break a rule or two, but we need to keep going, right? That was an amazing experience. I had the opportunity to build a complete team from the ground up, just starting with two lawyers and ending with more than 30 in different jurisdictions. And then I had the really good opportunity of coming to Vanguard. And I think it's kind of a mix, right? Because we were starting the Mexico City operation. So I was employee number 6, but we also have the
Oh,
support of the Vanguard Group institution, right? So all in all, it has been quite a ride and I have had fun. I can't complain where I'm at right now. I keep having these challenges, but they are really fun. And I really like to always be learning things. So my jobs have provided me that opportunity.
really interesting hearing about your journey going from like working in the US to working for a startup to now working for another bigger company like Vanguard. Quite a mix of things you have there. And really loved your point too about customer service because we also see that like at the end of the day, if the customer is happy, the company is happy and everyone's happy. So yeah. So Juan, was there an early moment in your career which you thought, again, both from a legal and compliance standpoint, that could be a lever for the business innovations that you drive today, for the customer service and the legal ops that you drive today,
Sure,
rather than just risk migration?
sure. And it's not a happy moment. But
Mhm.
I think it's important to talk about one's mistakes so people don't repeat them. Yeah, I think it was on the startup. It was a financial company, and we migrated for being a lender of lenders to also provide retail lending.
Mhm.
And people were starting to talk about e-signature, right? Electronic signature, digital signatures, and I had the opportunity to talk with a couple of providers, people that had really put pen to paper and analyzed from a Mexican legal perspective the viability of e-signature. Right? It seemed too good to be true, and it, took me, um, but I was hesitant for saying something. I was hesitant. It's always hard to be on the front line, be trailblazer. And here I had to worry about different circumstances, not only from a legal perspective, but also with a lot of securitizations. And if you originated trades using e-signature, if it's going to be acceptable or not for the securitization. It was just, again, being a trailblazer. And I hesitated, and it took me time to get there, more than I should have. And I think it would have been a huge competitive advantage for the company I worked at that time to be the first one to implement e-signatures, right? It just makes things easier. You cut costs, all the things that tend to relate to paper, the origination of the loans. Sometimes the sales associate missed a signature. It was just more complex, and then you have to re-originate. So it would have been
Yep.
just, again, putting pen to paper and think about that, analyze the risk, and took that chance. It would have been a material difference for the company I was working for. So I have, as a personal commitment, never to do that again. So I'm always open to hear about new technologies and new things that can be done from a legal perspective.
Definitely. And like such things happen to the best of us. So it's the learnings that we get from those that really help push us forward. So, Juan, tell me, right, from a vantage point at Vanguard, how do you think today technology is changing how the legal and compliance teams work, right? So, you talked about how you were working with e-signatures and such things in like the past, but how are automations, dashboards, contract life cycles, and other predictive risks and similar technologies changing your workflows, or is it something different that you're seeing at Vanguard?
No, I do see the change, and I think it's for the benefit of the function.
Hmm.
I think if you talk with anyone that has a position similar to the one I have, you're always fighting between what is important and what is urgent. Right? That's kind of the dilemma. The more you can leverage legal operations, legal tech, also the concept of legal design, then you can control the operation and really focus on the important things. And here we're talking about strategy. Where do you want to be in a couple of years? Where can legal create that change like the one with the e-signature, right? And
Hmm.
it is important to understand that now more than ever, companies want more from the legal functions. We have migrated, right, from being a control function to a business partner. And at least from in the finance industry, I think legal is part of the business, not a partner, is part of the business. Because if you think
Yeah.
about it, what do you sell in the finance industry? At the end, you're selling contracts, a loan
Mm.
agreement, uh, like a stock or a bond. All those are legal instruments. So it's different from, I don't know, if you sell Coca-Cola, then you're selling a hard product. But if you're selling financial services, what you're really selling is agreements. So the more efficient you are in your legal operations through just improving certain processes, that is kind of the line in a factory, right? If you think about
Mhm.
building cars in the financial industry, the way you get the agreements to the clients, it's so the benefits of what we are seeing are just impressive, right? Less mistakes in origination, more efficient processes. And of course, you're taking away a lot of the human error factor that
Mhm.
tend to be important when you're thinking about a complex operation.
Definitely really true. And like we have also seen something very similar working with a lot of finance companies and NPFCs that more than the actual legal work that you do. It's about the contracts that you push out. It's about the regulations that you take care at the back of your head at this point, right? Which help drive the company, because one small mistake in the finance domain can lead to losses in billions, probably more at times. Really important to see legal's role there and how you drive operations there. If there you could pick one metric, right, about, let's say, contracting or the legal system that should be available to you automatically or to prove value to the business, what is that one metric that you help pitch?
I think it's response time, right?
Awesome.
Response time. And maybe I'm biased from my experience as a law firm lawyer, but I
Mhm.
remember partners there cannot be unanswered for more than an hour. So that's part
Mhm.
of my structure. So I think response time, because response times, it's delivery to client, it's execution, it's getting to solutions. And here it doesn't have to be a yes. Saying no on time is much better than a lot of time later, right? I'll say that even when you're going to say no, it's even more
Mhm.
important to do it on time. So for me, response times
Mhm.
are essential. And we go again to the concept at the importance of legal operations. If you get stuck with the day-to-day operations, then your response times on the pretty important things are not going to be the ones that your clients require. The fact that you have in place to improve your legal operations allows lawyers to actually provide value. And how we can provide value by making decisions on time on strategy strategy goals, right?
Definitely really true. And response times, honestly, is one of not only the most important metrics, but also the most mission critical, because when things flow in the company, everyone benefits. When there's a roadblock at one person's end, the whole company slows down, because again, those slowdowns pass down to the next person and then to the next person. Talking a bit more about legal tech and legal work in the Latin America space, right? Because again, that is an expanding space in today's market. What would you say are some myths or some realities that outsiders don't know about legal and technology in the Latin America domain? What are some things that are up and coming but people wouldn't know as much outside?
I think that's a great question. I think at least my impression in Latin America is that it's pretty divided, right? You have the large
Hmm.
companies, local or international. Those companies, they I think we have understood the importance of legal tech and legal operations. But then you have all the
Hmm.
small ones or medium-sized ones. And even there, and I'm going to be pretty candid here, most of those see the legal functions as a necessary evil, right? Because they're
Hmm.
still stuck on the concept of legal and compliance is a control function more than part of the business. So culturally, they don't want to invest, right? So that's one of the first roadblocks. They barely want to have a legal function. Now investing in them, it sounds even worse, right? And it should be all the
Hmm.
other way around. But I think that's something that's happening. And it will be really interesting technology getting cheaper. I have seen like
Hmm.
at the beginning how much the cost was for a CLM, right? They weren't cheap. But I have seen the technology getting cheaper for compliance and for, let's say, contract management. And now there's a lot of providers and they're
Hmm.
trying new things. And it's a very scalable business. So I'm really looking forward to see what happens when they reach small companies or medium companies in Latin America.
Hmm.
Because as of today, I haven't yet seen that. And I think that's also, again,
Hmm.
because people don't see the role that legal and compliance can be a competitive advantage.
Definitely, very true. And like, I really agree with that point, because again, operating in both the Asian markets and in part of the Latin American markets, including like Mexico and Brazil, what we have seen at Case Rocker is that there's that initial hesitance about softwares and about external systems, right? But as teams actually start adopting these softwares, they do see the benefits, right? Because at the end of the day, the productivity boost, the risk mitigation, the sheer output that a tool gives you really helps boost the output of the legal team. So I think like it's only a matter of time once like companies start seeing these things, start adopting these tools and start using them on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
So yeah.
If you see it from a business
Mhm.
perspective, in a lot of these
Mhm.
places, legal and compliance is the bottleneck.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's not completely true, but this type of system changed that.
Mhm.
They give transparency, they give a lot of information to the business that they didn't know before. So I think they play an
Mhm.
essential role, especially where legal and compliance are seen as a bottleneck.
That actually reminded me of one integration that we were doing, right? So general counsel at a company that we worked with, he told me, and this is a major manufacturing firm operating across the globe. So they were saying that everything keeps getting stuck with legal, even though the legal team pushes things out. So why is legal being held responsible? And what we saw after implementing this system was that the legal team does do their work on time. Systems like these bring out that legal teams are getting their works done within the timelines. It's actually getting the data from business that can often be the bottleneck, and bringing visibility to that is the first step in that change.
Definitely. I cannot agree with you.
So, Juan, talking about the Latin American market, what do you see are the big structural challenges and changes that are coming, like from a regulatory fragmentation, legacy systems, and informal economy till an extent? And how do you think those affect legal teams today?
Well, definitely, as I mentioned, I think there's the cultural one, right? This what
Mhm.
we just described about small companies. I think large companies, especially the financial sector, has deeply understood the power of legal tech, and well, not just legal tech, right? In Mexico, we're seeing right now a change, an important change in the financial sector with the introduction of new players, the fintechs that are making things change in the legal market, right? I think that's the biggest challenge, cultural one. But you also have, and it's changing, right? You also have, let's say, from a compliance perspective, compliance is fairly new in our regions. And at the beginning, it was just focused on AML, but now it has started to expand, right? For companies in
Mhm.
Mexico, we weren't used to have, companies used to have a legal function, but not a compliance function. And
Mhm.
I think compliance is one of the functions that has more processes. Therefore, legal tech and having proper systems is more important, right? In a basic operation, thinking about a medium or small company, you have legal for the agreements with vendors and clients, and you have compliance to ensure compliance with regulation and prevent risk. But in both sides, you can have systems that make your operation more efficient, less prone to human errors. And also, we have seen regulators, especially from the compliance perspective, really appreciate that now more companies are using systems to ensure. In
Mhm.
Mexico, at least from an AML perspective, that's required per law. So you don't even have the option. If you're a financial entity, you have to have an AML system, not a full-blown
Mhm.
compliance system, but at least an AML one. So that's pretty important, and the regulator knows pretty well what they want to see in a compliance AML system.
Definitely. Really true, because like compliances and all the changing regulations with the changing technologies do put that stress on teams, and these systems only help alleviate that stress. So talking about again these changes and the changing technical issues, right? How do you ensure, again, in your organization, in the organizations that you worked at, that changing tech doesn't alienate both your lawyers and your compliance folks who are comfortable with working in the old way, right? Because there's always that constant conflict between old and new that is often seen in organizations.
I think that is a really question, Josh. I think I can use my example of e-signature, right? Because that is exactly the example. I was used to pen and paper, things on like hard copies, things that people sign, even sometimes they put their prints on it, right? So the idea of changing that was a hard one. Um, you can use me as an example, like you will miss competitive advantage just not by staying up to date. But here, I think, and it's not only particular to a legal function, we are seeing a huge change technology wise.
Mhm.
Um, and it's hard for people to understand, people to use. And right now, at least my experience has been that everybody wants to sell you something, right? And I have seen every day they come with a new AI tool that will make my life easier. But just the offer
Mhm.
that currently exists, it's hard to understand. So for me, the
Mhm.
most important thing, and again, I think this will apply to any tech tool that a company wants to implement, is it needs to be complemented with proper coaching and training. Because if not,
Definitely.
and it happens, right? I'm pretty sure that Outlook has a lot of functions like I don't use. I don't think I use half of the Outlook
Definitely.
capabilities. And we're talking about a very simple tool. Now, when we're talking
Mhm.
about more complex tools, it's hard to understand them. And companies and leaders need to understand that. So I think it's almost as important as the tool itself to have proper training and coaching on the uses of that tool. If not, I think we're going to see a lot of companies missing the potential that these tools can provide.
Definitely a true one there because there are multiple tools entering the market that do some AI workflow for you, right? But if the teams are actually not using the functionalities, it's not as beneficial. There may be 50 million different functionalities, but if you aren't able to use the 10 that you need, then what use is it? And that is something that we have seen personally at Kstalker also, that once teams start learning the tools, once they get that handholding and are familiar with how the tools work, they see the difference. But it is about that initial trench, crossing that initial milestone that really helps bring the change. Can you give me a story of one technical change that you brought into your teams that really helped not only increase the deliverables, but also get broader buy-ins for legal tools and legal operations that you have worked with?
Yeah, I can use, I think this is important, right? Of
Mhm.
course, right now we are seeing tools that can even substitute a junior lawyer, right? We're seeing very complex tools that can make
Mhm.
our work easier, a lot
Mhm.
easier. We are starting to use them, getting used to that. But sometimes there are simpler can also
Mhm.
make a change, right? And that's the example I want to use here, something that was pretty simple. It helped me to solve that dilemma of everybody blaming legal and compliance as a bottleneck. That was just a ticket system. People, depending on the type of services that we will provide, we compromise to certain SLAs, and then we put the tickets in place. My team was very aware of the response. What this system gave us was order, but also transparency and data. Once we complete what we need to do, we send it back to the person that requests. Sometimes that was it, but sometimes you need input from the other person, right? So
Mhm.
that tool also measure that. How much time
Mhm.
spent in the other side. So that gave clarity to other teams on how much their teams were taking to provide the responses that were necessary. That improved not only the legal operation, but also the operation on other functions, right? So
Definitely.
we starting to have clarity where things really got stuck.
Mhm.
And once you have clarity on that, you can take actions. Because if not, in the past was
And
like, yeah, the agreement isn't ready. So it sounds you're talking about agreement, so it should be legal's fault. But no,
yeah.
a lot of times you need input from other functions and other business to complete an agreement. And we weren't measuring
Mhm.
that. And there were other functions that were taking their time to complete their parts. So this very simple tool create a lot of efficiency all around the company. That's one of the most basic examples I can give that has a
Mhm.
tremendous impact on a business operation.
Definitely. Definitely really true. And like Something similar that we've really seen at Keystalker is also that like having not only that visibility into the workflows, but also standard timelines about like if an agreement should be drafted within 3 days, we expect a response within the next 4 days. Those things really help push teams and increase productivity, but also bring visibility to the bottlenecks in the whole system. So really great point that you brought up there. So talking about the modern legal workspace, right? How do you think that in today's day, hiring and building your legal team, especially in the Latin American market that you sit in, really is changing? And what are the skills and mindsets that matter today versus, let's say, 5 years back?
Well, I'm gonna divide my answer again, and I think it's
Mhm,
important, and I think it's more common in international companies, and this is not as
mhm,
common in local companies. But I will say that every day I'm more convinced that legal functions have to have a diverse set of skills. And what I mean
mhm,
diverse set of skills is that we should not only have lawyers.
mhm,
My previous role, we have an engineer, and that guy really made our operation a lot more efficient. We hired him just to help us keep our files up to date because for
mhm,
that company that was really important because it was really transactional. But then he started showing lawyers benefits of using technology. Very
mhm,
basic one because this guy wasn't an expert on legal tech or anything. He just was familiar with Excel and Outlook. So he started showing us
mhm,
certain functions that really made our job easier. I have that kind of real life experience, but that is what is happening right now. All functions need to evolve. So we need to have a diverse set of skills like this one, and someone that has something related to engineer. If I'm thinking in compliance, I also think in someone that has a background on risks, because lawyers sometimes they don't understand the whole structure of compliance risk framework. We can be very good at
mhm,
law, but maybe we don't have that experience. And I think that would be one part of my answer. Legal functions now need to have non-legal team members, and they contribute a lot to the operation of the legal teams, right? What I look for in lawyers, I think it maybe sounds simple, but I look a lot about the attitude, the
mhm,
compromise that they are showing, that willing to learn. I think is one of the
mhm,
most important people that wants to learn because I think the world is always going to be in a constant change. We have only seen
mhm,
that the world is changing faster and faster, and technology will just make that change occur even in a more high speed. So
mhm.
if you don't have the curiosity, you can have a role, but it's going to be a not meaningful one. So I think that the thing I look more is people that are curious and that they have this appetite for learning. All the other things can be worked on, but if you don't have that hunger for knowledge and that adaptability to change, then you're going to have a hard time in the next couple of years.
Definitely really true. And like this is, I think, like something that teams across the board are seeing. Like even we see that having the people who really want to learn in our teams, right? Having people who are adopting new technologies, who are using these new technologies to not only speed up their operations, but also bring up the rest of the team is really important in today's day. And they really help push the whole team forward because, again, like people bringing these things help introduce them to others in the team, help really push forward those workflows. So, moving on to the next question, right? From your experience, what does an effective partnership between legal, compliance, business, and the tech teams look like? And what has been the key to that in Vanguard for you?
I think that's key, right? Because
Hmm.
and we have talked about that evolution in the mindset of legal.
Hmm.
First, we were a control function. Then we realized that if we wanted to survive, we need to be a business partner. But I think
Hmm.
now we have to take that step further and realize that we are also the business.
Yes,
And we
definitely.
should be aligned. And maybe I'm thinking because again, the financial services, I'm convinced that what we're selling is legal products, but yeah, there has to be an alignment there. And it's easier said than done, right? Because you have, as a lawyer, you have certain things that you consider that are priorities, and they are.
Mhm.
The first one should always be uh, getting to the business goals, right? So there needs to be a lot of communication between what the business expect. These are our goals for the year. Then you really need to understand the role that you have on those goals being possible. If if I question someone from my team, like, do you understand the role that you have on the business getting to this goal? And they cannot give me the answer, I'm failing. All the members of my team should be pretty aware of the role they play on getting to a business goal. We need to do X amount of sales this year. Well, how the business team is going to implement the strategy to go there, and what's the legal role on that strategy. That has to be really clear in all of the members of my function, because that
Mhm.
allows them also to do something that is very important, that is prioritize, right? Establishing priorities. If you don't know your role and the impact that you have on the things that you do day to day on those business goals, then you're not going to establish your priorities in a proper way. So I think that's the most important part, that the legal function understands that they play an important role on the business goals, but
Mhm.
we also have our legal and compliance goals, right? We have to be the owners of our role on getting the business goals, on getting to the business goals. I don't know if that made sense, but
No, no, it really makes sense, one, because like it's about legal and business not only working hand in hand, but about pushing those business needs forward, pushing the business requirements forward, right? Because again, when legal and business work together, the business moves forward. While when they see each other as competing entities, everyone suffers. So really great insight that you had there.
and also when you to that
Mhm.
mindset is when
Mhm.
ideas like, okay, let's implement e-signature because this will make our life easier on getting to a goal.
Mhm.
Legal can provide really good ideas on strategy.
Definitely, really true. So yeah, before we wrap up now, Juan, what's a book, a podcast, or a thought leader that you have been inspired by recently? Again, on a more personal note, maybe something outside legal too that you'd recommend to our listeners and our viewers that you really think is necessary in today's day.
Okay, Atomic Habits. No, I'm joking. That's a no. I recommend two books. I want to give you the background, right? Because when you get to a certain position, yes, everybody wants a functioning legal function, but
Mhm.
another really important part of my role is getting things done.
Mhm.
And sometimes the challenges are not legal. Usually the challenge can be more about interactions with our teams, getting people to be on your side. So thinking about that, I will recommend two books. One is a business book. It's The Go Giver Influencer. It's a small book.
Mhm.
It's almost a story. I think you can read it in a couple of hours, but it's about understanding the other side's position and interest, right? To
Mhm.
achieve a common goal. And it's a very interesting book because it tells you a story of two individuals and what they think the person is thinking and the surprises they have when they realize that they weren't aligned. So that is, I think, when you're in a leadership position, influence, so getting people to do what you want, uh, so
Mhm.
so goals can be obtained. I think that's a really good book. And the other book, it's a related one, and I truly recommend it for everyone that is a parent of kids. Good Inside by Dr. Becky. I think she's terrific. And again, I think, of course, that book is on parenting, but it also gives you key concepts of human interaction, right?
Mm.
I love one that is you can accept that two things can be true. And it's
Mm.
about understanding the other side position instead of convincing them of something. Because when you
Mhm.
convince someone of something, it's almost as you're putting what you want first instead of trying to get to a mutual agreement when both parties have been heard. And
Mm.
one of the things is like you can even say no, but
Mhm.
accepting that two things can be true. Like, yeah, you're not gonna like this answer and you need to like it, but the way things
Mm.
are, and I cannot do anything
Yeah.
about it. I feel bad about this, but it is the way it is. Dr. Becky uses an example I think is pretty relatable, right? It's if your leader has promised you a raise, but then circumstances on the company change and he can no longer give you that raise.
Mm.
There are different ways to address that, right? And one is accepting that
Mhm.
the people that is not getting a raise is gonna be angry and frustrated. And if you recognize that, you can maintain a good relationship. Even if the answer is like
Mm.
it's the same, right? You're not getting the raise this year, but I understand your frustration and you validate that
Mhm.
feeling and you also tell them I understand it, but you can also feel yourself lucky of having still having that position, right? Because maybe other
Mhm.
people got fired and you can be frustrated and happy at the same time of having your job. It's
Mhm.
complex to explain, but I think there is a point where soft skills become so important. Books are
Mhm.
about that, so that's why I recommend them. Easy to read. If you're a parent, you have two wins because it can help you as a leader, but also as a parent. I would recommend those two.
Really great recommendations, one, especially the second one. Like, not a parent myself, but the kind of thought insight that you say the book brings out really matter in today's day. Because again, in teams now, it's about those soft skills. It's about that communication that really matters, right? Because a lot of people can do things, but it's about doing them in a way that not only is everyone happy, but everyone learns and everyone grows at the same time is what is most important nowadays.
Exactly.
So yeah, thanks a lot again, then, Juan, for being here on the podcast today and for sharing your insights. And hope you have a great rest of the
No,
day.
thanks for having me here, Josh. Thanks.